Hello and welcome to a special episode 21 of the Positive Regression Podcast. In this episode, I wanted to answer questions around success and how we can frame it in a way that serves us. And in order to do this, I've asked a professional psychological interviewer to ask me some questions. And that interviewer just so happens to be my beautiful fiancée, Julia. Have you ever asked yourself, what does success actually mean to you? Well, in this episode, we explore what that means and how we can frame it in a way that it serves us. So stick around and let's jump into the episode.
Why don't you tell me why we're here?
So we're here today to talk about success and the ways that we define it, because this is episode 21 of the podcast, and depending on how you measure it, being in the top 1% of podcasters only requires you to release at least 21 episodes of podcasts, because most podcasts die out before then. So I wanted to change up the format and have you ask me some questions around success and framing what success means, so that we can basically look at how we can use the way that we frame success to motivate us, to drive us forward, rather than being something that fills us with shame.
Okay. The first thing you said is depending on how you define it, depending on how you define success. So what does success mean to you? How do you define success?
Currently, and I used to be one of these people that would look at success, I think, in a way that is very common these days, is the millions of dollars in the bank, the fast car, the nice house, and see that as the only version of success that mattered. And the trouble with that is anything that's less than that feels like a failure. And so now, having gone through a process of seeing where that kind of mindset gets me, I've changed the way that I look at success. So now I view success as the intentional pursuit of a meaningful goal. So rather than it being the achievement of something, it's actually more the process of achieving something. And I find by looking at success as all of those little wins along the way, it stops me from being discouraged. And
Does that mean the original definition of success doesn't apply anymore? Is it no longer still about status, money, driving the fast car?
No, I think those things, they are important in modern society, and I think it would be foolish to kind of just neglect those entirely. It is important to be financially free. It's nice to have nice things, to have that financial stability, to have the cars and the house and all the rest of it. But it's a very narrow definition of success. And if that's the only definition that we use, then we tend to miss out on all of the other things that we can be grateful for and all of the other successes in our life. And it's just not a very practical or helpful framing of what success is. So yes, keep that in mind. And if that's your goal, fine. Like, it's perfectly fine to have that as kind of an ultimate aim. But it's also really, really important to look at all of the little successes along the way that help you to keep going towards that big goal. And I think the other thing that's really important to remember is that at some point you will achieve that goal. And if that's your only definition of success and you achieve that goal, you're not going to have a feeling of fulfillment for very long, because we know from neuroscience that dopamine, the chemical that makes us feel good, it's what we crave, is actually a drug of pursuit rather than achievement. So we are receiving dopamine as we're moving forward towards our goal. But once we achieve that goal, you feel good in the short term. But listen to any seriously successful entrepreneur or business magnate who's built a multi-billion-dollar business and sold it, they feel lost, they feel empty. And so it's finding ways of ensuring that we don't have that feeling at the end, and also don't miss out on all the goodness along the way. And that's how I look at success now.
So where do you think that original definition of success comes from? Like, because what you were mentioning is something I think a lot of people can relate to. That's something that is maybe commonly perceived as success. So where are we taking this from? Where's that coming from?
It's very easy to jump on the social media bandwagon and blame that on everything. I think there are multiple aspects to it. Firstly, we know that for men, status and wealth is probably the largest impactor on mate selection. So if you have a lot of money and you have a lot of success financially, then you are much more likely to have a broader range of women to choose from, or a range of women that are attracted to you. And so for men in particular, it's essential to survival. But one thing that's really crucial to remember is that financial success is actually just a proxy for competency. And so now we're getting into more relationship dynamics, but financial success, yes, women want someone who can take care of them, who can provide for a family, have that financial safety and security. But when we're looking at pure attraction, let's say on social media, and people are flashing cars and things, what women are attracted to is not so much the financial aspect, but it's the finances are they show a level of competency. They show somebody who's able to work hard, they're smart enough to go out and make a lot of money. And that's actually what women tend to be more attracted to on a deeper level. It's not the money, it's the competency. It's the type of person who's more likely to be able to earn more money.
Before we go on, do you want to move that little spider off your shoulder?
Oh, look at him. Oh, he's gone. Let me know if he comes back. He's just interested in the podcast. So, and then obviously the second aspect to that is we have social media now. So rather than comparing ourselves to the person down the road, we are now comparing ourselves to everyone. And that creates this kind of, it's competition. It's a gamification of like seeing somebody with more, regardless, you don't know what their life circumstances are, but you see that and you want to compete. And because you feel if you are not at that level, then you're less successful, you're less valuable, you're less worthwhile. And so that aspect of social media certainly helps to perpetuate this desire to show off in monetary ways. Hedonism has grown out of that ability to compare with everyone.
Now, when you describe it like that, it almost seems like counterproductive, right? Because we're comparing ourselves to other people. It makes us feel probably not very good if we're not at that point, right? So why do you think it's so difficult for people? Why do so many people struggle with defining success in their own ways rather than, letting society or letting social media or whatever it is decide what success is and what they have to achieve?
I think in a big way, it's people, we're not raised to think for ourselves. We are raised in an environment where we are encouraged to simply fit in. And fitting in is the case in a lot of different aspects, but going along with whatever the status quo is part of that. And so we're just encouraged to look at what everybody else is doing it and more or less do the same. Could you just rephrase the question again?
I guess in a way, looking at the outside, looking at external definitions of success doesn't seem very, doesn't do us any good, right? If you're not in that position and you're comparing yourself to the multimillionaire, we're going to feel probably pretty shit about yourself, right? So why why wouldn't you start defining success in your own way, right? Like kind of like what you were saying at the beginning. Why do people struggle with leaving that external definition that's pushed upon them and define it for themselves?
Good question. And I think a big part of it is people firstly aren't aware that that's possible. We take in information from the external world, and we think that that's the only way.
So we just take it as a given.
We just go along with what's being done. We take it as a given. We don't think about ways of. Often we don't think about what the downsides to doing things in the way that's always been done are.
Yeah.
We see, well, everybody's doing it that way, so that must just be the right way. But that's not the case necessarily. And so a big part of what I'm trying to achieve with this podcast and the community and program that I'm working on is to point out to people that you don't have to just go along with status quo. It's worthwhile giving some thought to what you're actually going after in life, and then to decide whether that's actually working for you. Is that giving you the feeling that you want, or is it making you feel less valuable? Is it making you feel like a failure because you don't have the millions yet? So yeah, it's a big part of people just not realizing that they have the ability to choose. And once you start to question those things, that just opens up an entirely new world of possibility, because you realize just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's the right way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it sounds like we're already sort of going into a more of a mindset kind of framework. So what do you think, what kind of shifts or what kind of changes in mindset are necessary to make that possible, right? To allow yourself to redefine success?
Well, firstly, it's the awareness to know that is a possibility, to know that you can choose. Also, I think it really comes down to understanding that the way that we operate in the world is simply a bunch of stories that we tell ourselves about what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false. But the story we tell ourselves is not the only story that can be told. And often the story we tell ourselves is not one that's actually beneficial to us. And so once you realize that we're operating based on a story, usually not of our choosing, we've sort of crafted the story through our upbringing, through inputs that have been put onto us from society, our parents, all of these factors, things that we've taken as a given and then incorporated into our personality. Once you realize that is just a story and you can tell another story, then it's a matter of shifting and going, okay, well, what is a story that I can tell myself that is actually useful to me? So I take this podcast for example. Episode 21. I'm now, by one definition, in the top 1% of podcasters globally. Pretty cool, right? I could tell myself a different story. I could look at how many uploads or downloads, subscribers, listeners are required to be in the top 1%. And I would not meet that definition of top 1% yet. Why would I choose that definition? What's the benefit of using that definition? Well, it doesn't really help me, right? There's no real benefit to me by giving myself a definition that doesn't motivate me. So I'm going to choose one that is true, right? It's not about lying to yourself, but it's about choosing stories that are useful. So in this case, it is true that if you upload 21 episodes or thereabouts, you are now in the top 1% of podcasters. Well, that's a great thing to think. Like, okay, I have now outcompeted 99% of other people that have started a podcast. That was a goal for me. It was like, well, all I need to get to 21 episodes, and I've beaten 99% of people that started a podcast. And now all of a sudden, I know that I am more committed and have kept at something way more than somebody else. Now it's a comparison, but that fills me with a sense of achievement, of pride, of accomplishment. And that may not be the final hurdle, of course, it wasn't just I want to get to 21 episodes, but that was like a first thing of like, wow, if I get to that point, I've really accomplished something, and now I can look at the next goal. But if I'd set myself up for, let's say, I needed to be in the top 1% of downloads, then the goal is so much further in the future that it becomes less motivating. It's so far away from where I'm at that it's hard to visualize, and I'm not getting that pursuit of the dopamine hit along the way.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would say a lot of people that are listening to this probably are starting to get that little feeling of like a bit of nervousness, a bit of like unrest, because there's things like a little bit of fear. There's self-doubt. We all love self-doubt, right? It's easy to sort of get in our heads. So what would you tell people? I mean, have you experienced fear, self-doubt along the way, and how did you overcome that? How did you get to the point where you're at right now?
Absolutely. Of course, everybody has fear and everybody has doubt. And it's something that I struggled with immensely in the past and still struggle from time to time with now. I think what's helped me the most is realizing that a lot of the fear and the doubt that we have just comes from our ego. So it's a part of us that is worried about failure. It's worried about what others are going to think of us. What happens if I did start this thing and it doesn't work out? What will other people think of me? How will they see me? And for me, it's been really helpful just to remember that, to go, this is fear talking. I am being concerned about what other people are going to say, and to acknowledge that part of me without placing too much emphasis on that. To say, okay, that's part of me, but that's a part of me that's actually not serving me. It's trying to keep me safe, but it's not actually helping me to go after my dream. So I'll see that, I'll hear it, but then I will put it to the side and carry on and stay on the path that I've set myself. And I think that's a really useful reframing. I think a lot of times in life we feel something and we think that we have to pay attention to it. We feel something, we think that is the truth, but that is part of the truth. That is one aspect of our being. And by acknowledging that part, but recognizing that we get to choose whether we act on those emotions or not, we can start to then choose to not act on that out of fear. And for me, it was a big decision, and I've spent most of my life trying to overcome fear in different areas of my life. And for me, the biggest, I suppose the real starting point or a foundational aspect was, I will not allow myself to be controlled by my fears. I will not act out of fear. That was, and by making that decision and then reminding myself every time I'm feeling afraid, to say, I will not let myself be controlled by my fear. Then it making conscious what is usually unconscious. And once you make conscious what is unconscious, you can then choose a different route.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like consciousness is the key to a lot of things here, because we have to become aware of what kind of definition of success is put upon us. We need to kind of become aware of our own, little demons that are keeping us from going after what we want. I realized all of that. I've done that part of the work. Now, 21 episodes, that still sounds like a lot of work. That still sounds like, having to be disciplined, having to be, really onto it to get to that point. How did you experience that? Did you have ups and downs? Like, what was the journey like in terms of discipline?
Yeah, of course there were ups and downs. And I think I come back to this idea of the ego. The ego is, as I define it, the part of the self that it's really, for most people, a part that really holds them back, because it's where your fear lives. It's your fear of judgment. This sort of smaller, it's like the smaller version of who we could be. And when it came to doing the podcast, firstly, it's about getting your ego out of the way. Because a lot of the times we think, well, if I fail, then I'm a failure, right? That's your ego talking, your fear talking. If I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is this idea that they need to be perfect right from the get-go. Because again, we see people that have achieved a whole lot and they're doing everything really, really well. And people don't realize that where they started. But then again, it's that ego talking of like, well, I have to be like them now. It's like, who do you think you are? Like, you have to start where you are. Like, take your pride out of the equation, accept that you're going to suck right from the get-go. You just are. Like, the thing that stops people from like starting something new is the fear of sucking. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing. And the older you get in life, the more we think that we're supposed to have everything figured out. And so the less inclined we are to try something new where we're not going to have it figured out. And so when it came to the podcast, I started the podcast and I recorded a few episodes, and then I struggled to record an episode, or I was busy, or I just didn't feel like it. And it's very easy when we start a new pursuit to think that we have to be perfect. And as soon as we break the routine of being perfect, let's take going to the gym as an example. You go to the gym for 2 weeks, and as soon as you miss a day, you're like, oh, well, fuck it. It was worth a shot. And then you never go again, right? Because you think you've broken that pattern. It's like, well, if I couldn't be perfect, I'm not going to bother. And I think a lot of the time, that's just how ego talk. Like, it's like, get out of your own way. Just accept that you, have some humility. And so with the podcast, coming back to my journey on this podcast, yes, I had periods of time where I didn't record, and then I came back and I was like, all right, this is going to be the episode, guys. And I'm now recording regularly, once a week, every week. And then the next week I didn't record an episode. Now it would be easier for me to go, oh, well, I tried, and never go back to it. But I had a vision, a larger goal. And I had at that time, the humility to say, okay, that's just part of it. I'm imperfect. I say, I tried to release one every week. Didn't work.
I think that's really interesting, because when I think of discipline, or I think when a lot of people think of discipline, they think of staying on track no matter what, right? Like doing the same thing over and over, and no matter whether it's painful, no matter whether it's, but maybe that's exactly the point where people get discouraged, because if you think discipline has to look perfect as well,
yeah.
As soon as you stray from that path, then it's like the discipline goes out the window completely.
Yeah.
So is discipline getting back on the horse once you've come off?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've struggled a lot with discipline as well, and defining it. Because I wouldn't consider myself a highly disciplined person in that kind of rigidity of like once a day, every day, just consistency. So I think that it's a combination of discipline, having the discipline to get back up on the horse when you fall off. That is a form of discipline, along with humility to accept that you're not perfect, that you've made a mistake, or you haven't lived up to the standards you set yourself. But also compassionate. And that's something that I struggled with for a long time. It's like actually being compassionate with myself. Even saying that word now, I'm like, wow, compassionate. I don't like how that feels, but actually that sort of gentleness to say, okay. And it comes back to humility. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying, and I'm gonna try again. I'm not gonna beat myself up for failing, because beating myself up doesn't help. I'm just gonna accept that, okay, didn't live up to myself in this moment. Let's get it back at it and try again. And that's helped me a lot. It's just to kind of be compassionate with yourself, because if you beat yourself up every time you make a mistake, then you fear making mistakes because you're punishing yourself. So we need to be less harsh on ourselves. We're much harsher on ourselves than anybody else is. Be less harsh on ourselves. Be humble enough to recognize that we're not going to be perfect when we're starting something, or even when we're good at something. You're never going to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. But we can aspire to be the best that we can be and be gentle with ourselves along the way.
Okay, you used the term failure a couple times. At the beginning, just now. So when we're talking about success, let's talk about failure, right? So what's failure? What does failure do? Are we actually failing?
Oh, again, it depends on the resolution that you look at. In the past, I used to have a very close, like zoomed in approach to failure, like looking at this task. If I fail this task, I'm a failure, right? Not that, oh, I've just messed up on this task. No, I would take that personally and I really honed in, like everything I did. If I don't do this perfectly, I'm a failure. But
so you didn't fail at something, but you were
I was a failure.
So you internalized the failure no matter what.
And I think a lot of us do that. Yeah, especially people that have high standards for themselves. They take it very personally. And then again, that's the ego. It's the ego taking it personally. What I find really helpful, and maybe some listeners out there will also find it helpful, is to zoom out and to recognize that you are a small speck on a slightly larger speck in an infinite universe of other specks. Like, stop taking yourself so seriously.
You're irrelevant, people.
You're relevant, but like, put it into perspective, you know? Get rid of your ego. And I know I keep coming back to that, but that's that part of like thinking, oh, well, I'm so important that I've got to be perfect. Just like, no, you're not. Like, just get out of your own way. Zoom out. We're here for 100 years if we're lucky, right? You're going to live 100 years afraid of failure? Are you going to pursue something for, 3/4 of your life and then only going to enjoy it when you've achieved that for like 2 years or 3 years or 4 years? So I think zooming out, looking at it, taking more of a holistic view of your life in the cosmos is helpful. Kind of, again, it sort of, at least for me, it brings a real sense of humility to me to recognize the world doesn't revolve around me, and therefore I shouldn't be so concerned about my own mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails, right?
Mm.
But to be so hard on yourself doesn't help. And that I think is also a really important thing, is to be very clear on what is it you're trying to achieve. Because if you're actually wanting to achieve something great, then if you're constantly worrying about failure, that's just getting in the way. So do you actually want to achieve it, or are you just focusing on avoiding failure? And most people go through life trying to avoid pain rather than actually trying to achieve something.
Have you ever experienced failure that in the end turned out to be a blessing? Like something where you thought it was sort of a setback, or something that in the end maybe was more, I don't know, a lesson or something, right? Because I guess not every failure stays a failure necessarily.
Well, again, it depends on the story that you tell yourself. So a failure is only a failure if that's what you tell yourself it is. You can reframe it. A failure is not a failure, it's a lesson. You either achieve something or you learn something. I look at it this way. Everything that I've done in my life, all the failures, quote unquote, have led me to where I am today. Now, if I like where I am and what I'm doing, then there were no failures, because they brought me here. If I don't like where I am today, then I need to make better choices. And then constantly worried about failures is also not going to serve me, because it's just going to make me afraid to go out and try to achieve something. So no matter which way you look at it, thinking about failures as being something terrible that needs to be avoided or that you should feel shameful for it's just not a healthy framing of your life. It doesn't actually benefit you. And, something that I keep trying to reiterate with all the content that I put out is like, choose better stories. Choose stories that serve you. Choose mindsets and framing of your life in a way that actually serves you in the pursuit of your higher self.
Now, in terms of your listeners, because I guess for me, it's always like I hear that and it all sounds logical. That sounds plausible. It sounds, it sounds good. It's like, oh yeah, just choose a different story, or, like don't see failure as failure. And is there an actual game plan that I can follow? Are there actual like habits, like specific things that I can do or train or try to change my mindset? Because change your mindset is not something that is very helpful for a lot of people, right?
Yeah. So firstly, it is very simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. There's a reason that so many people struggle with this. It's much easier to stay in our old behaviors, the behaviors that we've incorporated over the course of our lives. And usually those are ones that keep us safe, quote unquote. But by being safe, you're not actually developing your full potential. You're not living the life that you really want because you're focused on short-term safety and security. So it's not easy, but it is very simple. And the first step is to become aware. To become aware that of the things that I've already mentioned. Be aware that you're telling yourself a story every day of your life. To start recognizing the story that you're telling yourself. To start noticing when you go through life, or let's hone in. When you go through your day, and let's say you have an interaction with your partner, and let's say they say something and you get really angry, and you blame your partner for it. Have the frame of mind to just take a moment to question that. Just start by questioning. Is what they said the problem, or is it my internal world that is triggered by what my partner has said that is the problem? Maybe it's something about the story that I tell myself about who I am, about who that person is supposed to be, about the situation that we're supposed to be in, that is actually the cause for the anger and this discomfort. And once you start to notice these and question these aspects, you might just see little insights into, no, actually, it's not that my partner said something that I really disagreed with. There was an insecurity within myself that was triggered by what my partner said. And maybe I need to look at that insecurity. Maybe I need to work on myself so that those sorts of things don't have so much control over myself. Because
I think my partner was probably the
again, and again, you could justify that view as well, right? Like, because when I talk about telling different stories, it's not that the story that you're telling yourself currently doesn't have truth to it. It's not that you can't justify that story and it's just made up. No. There is. You can find reasons why you should be believing that story. Of course we can.
Well, there's usually truth in every story.
Absolutely. But it's about, like, what does that story give you? How does it serve you? What does that truth actually give you? Maybe I need to look at other ways of perceiving this interaction that serve me in a greater way. And I think that's such a crucial step. And then it's having the frame of mind to remind yourself of this practice of being aware, of noticing things, noticing what's going on in yourself, to notice the thoughts, to notice the feelings, and to start questioning those thoughts and feelings. And sometimes you might question it and say, no, I think I think that was...
I was right. They were the problem.
I think that, yeah, exactly. I was right. But question it. Ask yourself, is my behavior in the situation, are my thoughts in the situation serving me to move me closer to my ultimate goal? And for that, you really need to know, you need to know what your ultimate goal is. Like, and by goal, I don't mean something external to yourself. I actually mean something within yourself. Who is the person that I want to be, right? What are my values? Who do I want to become in this world? How do I want to operate? How do I want to engage with reality? And once you start thinking about who that person is, and you're conscious of the thoughts and the feelings, and you're questioning them, then you can start aligning your story to meet that higher goal, that higher version of yourself that you're actually wanting to get. And you can start just ignoring the other little triggers and the other aspects of the story that you've been telling yourself that don't actually serve you towards in moving towards that goal.
Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody came to you and said, I want to be successful, what would you tell them? What would you ask them? What kind of advice would you give them?
What do you mean by success? What is, like what you asked me at the beginning, what does success mean to you? And most people usually will start with, I want to be financially successful. Okay, good. That's a good thing to want. Most of us want that. I certainly want that. But what else? That's not enough. That is not going to fill you with purpose. It's not going to it's not going to set you up well in life. So what else does success look like to you? What are other aspects of your life? And there's lots of external aspects that we can analyze. So, I want to have a loving relationship, a family, kids. I want the nice house. I want to be free to choose what I do with my time. But one really crucial aspect of the way that I view success is, or who do you want to be? Like success, you have to also look within to what success means internally.
Not just who you want to be, but also, I guess, what do you want to feel like, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess when chasing the house, chasing the family, chasing the relationship, chasing the sports car, like we're actually craving the feeling that comes with it, right?
Yeah.
We're not craving the car, we're craving the feeling of driving that car and people looking at us and, whatever it would be.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very valid point, is to also understand that it's not the things, it's the meaning that we take from having the things or earning the things. And to recognize that it's possible to generate those feelings from within us. We don't have to rely on external circumstances to feel good. A really great way of framing success for me, for example, is, I want to feel at peace within myself. I want to feel confident, capable. I want to feel love and joy. It's so easy to externalize all of those feelings, right? We say, once I achieve X, I'm going to feel good. Once I earn $1 million, I'm going to feel proud of myself. Once I have the relationship, then I'll feel love. Problem with that is you're pulling the cart for the horse, right? It makes it so much harder to achieve those things if you don't already feel them. And we can start to generate those emotions and those feelings within ourselves by the thoughts and the stories that we tell ourselves. And once we feel love and we feel joy, then we will naturally attract love and joy into our lives, because like attracts like. It's you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And so if you feel confident and capable and you feel worthy, right? Feeling worthy is a big one. If you feel worthy of success, you feel worthy of financial abundance, then those are the things that naturally start to gravitate towards you, because you are also moving towards them, because that is what your expectation is. You feel like that's what is right for you. If you don't feel worthy of things, then you're going to naturally push them away. If something good comes towards you and you think, oh, I'm not deserving of that, then you'll go, no, thanks. And it won't be conscious necessarily. Sometimes it is conscious, but a lot of the times it's unconscious. You won't see the opportunities that come. Somebody offers to help you and you go, no, I don't need help, because you don't think you're deserving of help. But maybe on the other side of that help was the success that you are craving that's going to make you feel worthy of the help, you know?
Well, I get that there's a lot of internal work, right? And there's a lot of mindset shift. There's a lot of changing perception. You said, you can change the way you feel. We do not live isolated in this world, right? So no matter what we do, there will be external factors. And I think especially when we're talking about success, we can't leave out the fact, I think you started out with that, saying, we're always worried about what other people will think.
Yes.
Right? Because as much as we would like to just measure success for ourselves, there's other people that kind of tell us what they think, no matter whether we ask them or not. Right? So is there anything that you would, like any piece of advice, anything that you would tell people how to maneuver that, right? How do you stick with your more serving definition of success in a world where other people might be there, look at you, potentially judge you? We don't know, right? But what do we do when other people give us their definition of success?
Well, the great thing about doing the internal work, the great thing about knowing yourself, is that you no longer need external validations. You no longer care so much what other people think, because you know yourself. I think a lot of the reason.
But what do I do in the meantime until I'm there, until I've accomplished that sort of inner peace, and because we don't always just jump to that. So
no, we don't. Again, it is a journey, but the more conscious you become of your progress along the journey, the quicker it improves, and the less you will need external validation. I think that, for a big, in large part, you just have to put up with your insecurities for a while. But, and again, I want to reiterate, once you become conscious that it's your internal fear that causes you to want validation from others, then when somebody says something that causes you to feel ashamed or not good enough, you can witness that thought as well. And you can witness those feelings and go, I see what's happening now. I'm feeling ashamed or not worthy because of what's happening in me, not because of this person. Well, I have the choice, right? I can choose whether I place value on that feeling. I get to choose. Now, you might not be able to stop that feeling from occurring within you immediately. That comes with a lot of practice. But once it starts, you can catch it and go, I see what's going on there. I see, that's my ego, that's my fear, that's my self-doubt. That's all coming up, and it's just being triggered by these external circumstances. And once you catch that, you go, thank you. I hear you. Somebody I interviewed, Jeremy Talks to Strangers. He says, thanks for sharing. Recognize that that's part of you that is feeling that way. And then go, but I'm not gonna listen to that now. That's not serving me. That's not the kind of person that I want to become. And each time you do that, those feelings reduce, those negative feelings reduce. And very quickly, this thing it's really hard at the beginning, but very quickly, you just completely shift the way that you receive the external world and input from the external world.
I guess you have to realize first that it is a choice, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I've been saying, and that is exactly key. It's to understand that the way that you feel is a choice. Now, it's not a choice that most people are making consciously anymore but at some point it was, right? Our programming, the way that our programming works is we have input, we have like a conscious behavior, and then it gets internalized. And so through repetition, you take something, it's conscious at the beginning, and then over time, as it repeats, it becomes automatic and unconscious. And so to make what's unconscious, to be able to change what's unconscious, you have to first make it conscious. And so, you've just got to realize that it is a decision and take ownership of that. There's a choice to be made. It's like, do I want to be a victim? And do I want to feel like a victim? And people like feeling like a victim because it means, if I'm a victim, if what's happening to me is not my fault, then I don't have to do anything about it. That's very helpful in the short term, right? It can be soothing. It's like, well, I don't have to take responsibility for the way that I feel. I don't have to take responsibility for my situation in life. But that mindset is not going to get you to the place that you want to go. So figure out where you want to go and then realize that it's on you. You have the ability to change your situation. You have the ability to change your thoughts and your feelings.
That reminds me, I think I told you that story of, I was talking to my therapist actually and mentioned that I sometimes, when I don't like sharing my plans, I don't like sharing ideas that I have because people might come up with questions like, what are you going to do about this? Like, when are you going to do this? Like, what's your business plan, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like sharing those plans because I'm worried that I can't give them the answers, right? And she just like super calmly goes, you can just tell them that you don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, it just blew my mind because I was like, what? That's an option, right? Like I can make that choice. I'm not responsible for telling them everything, right? And I guess it's that like, to me, it was so normal that people ask me a question and I have to answer, right? I have to give them whatever they were asking. And to me, that was like a massive shift. Like, I actually have a choice. I can just go, that's none of your business, or I don't know yet, or I'll share when I'm ready. And I guess it's very similar in that sort of regard that you can actually choose your reaction to things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and there is an alternative to the one reaction that you think is the right one.
100%. Just because there is an input doesn't that need to be. Just because something starts the program doesn't mean that you can't switch the program off or change what that program is. On top of that, it's also, I think, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but I felt this in my own life. I've been afraid to tell people my plans because I fear that if my plans change or
fail.
Yeah, exactly. Change can be
perceived as failure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Then I think, what is this person going to think of me then?
Or I owe them an explanation, right? I need to tell them why things changed or why I failed, right? I need to justify myself. And I get that, yeah. I have had that in the past.
But you don't need to justify it. Our current being, our personality, our identity is shaped by the past. So we have this affinity or this attachment to what's happened in the past. We think that we owe it to our past to remain the same, that we can't change. Because if we change, if we become different people, that we're somehow betraying the past. And it's a silly way of thinking about things because we are supposed to grow. We're supposed to change. Your opinions are supposed to change. Your ideas are supposed to change.
Well, growth is change.
Growth is change.
You have to. Yeah, you have to change.
Absolutely. But so often we get stuck in this mindset of, I need to stay true to what I've done in the past, who I was in the past, how I've behaved and felt in the past. And And we forget that we can just let it go. We can literally just choose to be different. We can let all of the pent up sadness and regret and resentment and shame, we can just let it go. It's just that we carry it around with us because it feels good, because it gives us a sense of knowing ourselves, right? Oh, I know myself. But is that self-serving you? Like, are those negative emotions actually helping you? No. A lot of the time they're not. But we hold on to it because we think that if we let go of it, it's like, well, yeah, who am I? But you can let go of it, and then you can choose something else. You can choose something that actually serves you, and that's a big part of it. You have to let go of the past. You have to let go of the old stories, and you have to choose new ones.
So to kind of wrap this up and to kind of bring this all together, because we started out talking about success and then we sort of dove into like the little alleyways along the road. How would you summarize your view on success now, and what would you like to be the takeaway from this very successful 21st episode?
Use a definition of success that serves you. That serves you now. That serves you in 6 months. That serves you in 10 years. Don't just use a definition of a success that only serves you in 10 years when you maybe achieve that big, lofty goal. Do you want to spend the next 10 years not feeling whole? Do you want to spend the next 10 years not feeling like you've achieved anything in your life? Probably not, if you ask yourself and be honest with yourself. So choose a different definition. And it's not lying to yourself. Choose a definition that is truthful, but that serves you along the path to your ultimate goal. It's okay to have an ultimate goal, but be grateful for what you have and what you achieve, and recognize those things along the way. That's the big takeaway. You get to choose the definition of success. You get to choose the story that you tell yourself. Stop relying on external circumstances, external inputs to tell you how you should feel about your life. It's a big one.
Pretty good takeaway.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right.
Thank you.
That wraps up episode 21. Hope that helps. See you in the next episode.